Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Today I wanted to give you a closer look at a very brief segment of 16mm DAC motion picture footage from the NASA archives that was originally shot back in July of 1969 during the flight of Apollo 11. And the footage was taken through one of the windows of the Command Service Module during what was called the Trans-Lunar Coast, or TLC phase of the mission. And this was the 3-day period when the astronauts were crossing the almost 400,000 kilometer Cis Lunar void that separates our Earth from the Moon. And at some point during this outbound journey through Cis Lunar Space, one of the Apollo 11 astronauts did some unscheduled shooting with the 16mm DAC motion picture camera, and in the process managed to film several unidentified objects outside their spacecraft. And to show you what I mean, let's first just have a look at the raw segment of footage exactly as it's archived and shown by NASA in their Apollo archives. And I'll warn you though that this raw segment of footage is very brief and the scene it shows is very unstable. So don't blink or you might miss it. Here's the clip. Like I said, very brief and very unstable. And I need to clarify a very important point here related to frame rate and playback speed, because while this particular clip has been digitally archived by NASA so that when played back it appears to be about 1 second in duration, it is not actually showing us a 1 second period of time caught on film. This clip we're examining here is actually time-compressed stop-motion footage. And in this case, the sequence is comprised of 11 individual distinct frames of 16mm film that were originally exposed at 1 frame per second intervals over a period of 11 seconds. And this type of stop-motion filming was possible because the Mauer 16mm DAC that was used throughout the Apollo program was in fact a variable frame rate motion picture camera that was capable of shooting at 4 different preset exposure speeds, either 1, 6, 12, or 24 frames per second. And in the case of this footage, rather than archiving it at the correct 1 frame per second playback speed, they instead incorrectly archived the sequence as if it had been shot at 12 frames per second instead. So this means that NASA actually present this stop motion sequence in such a way that it is being shown at a playback rate that's 12 times faster than what the frames were actually exposed at. In addition to those playback speed issues that must be appreciated, these 11 frames of stop-motion film also clearly suffer from significant camera movement between each exposure. However, this segment of footage does provide us with a known stationary object within the field of view. One of the RCS quad thrusters on the lunar module is visible outside the window in all 11 frames of this sequence. So using that RCS quad thruster as our target object, we can stabilize this short sequence and effectively cancel out that camera shake. And in the now stabilized version of this scene, you see that the RCS quad thruster has been specifically targeted so that it now remains locked in place throughout the duration of the 11 frame sequence. And with the shake removed, you can now see more clearly that the several unidentified objects are moving around outside the window. Now, unfortunately, due to the stop motion 1 frame per second nature of this footage, and the fact that the camera was handheld, there is significant object movement that occurs between each frame that was not caught on film. So any attempt to try to build individual flight path profiles for these unidentified objects so that we could better plot their individual movement tracks as they float across a field of view would be speculative at best. The available evidence in these 11 frames simply lacks the required movement data to ensure the accuracy of the flight path tracks, so I'm not even going to attempt to do that here. When I first looked at the largest and most defined of these unidentified objects, the one that is initially visible for the first few frames at the top of the field of view, I was reminded of another somewhat similar looking unidentified object that was also filmed while in Cis Lunar Space just a few months prior, back during the Apollo 10 mission in May of 1969. And in that case, the unidentified object, which was visible above the lunar limb, was filmed from the CSM using the 70mm Hasselblad still camera. And while certainly not identical, this UFO filmed during Apollo 10 does seem to share at least some rudimentary similarities to the one that was filmed with the 16mm DAC during Apollo 11 2 months later. So I just thought I'd point that out here. Whatever these objects are, they are clearly flying free in space, and we can say with certainty that they are definitely not any declared satellites or known debris. We don't know what they are, where they came from, how they got there, where they're going, or what they're doing there. And that, by definition, puts them into the category of being unidentified.